Municipals, this is Ashton. Before we dive into this rather lengthy episode about OG Bandon and Bandon Trails, I wanted to give a shout out to, of course, our title sponsor, Union Green. We mentioned on last week's, or I guess 2 weeks ago, the podcast about why we're excited, kind of Union Green's accessibility, and really kind of highlighting the importance of public golf and what it can do, which of course is everything that we stand for as well. So again, wanted to share, our promo code Municipals20 for 20% off your first order. And again, don't forget about Union Green. They've got two different kinds of golf balls, and right now they're doing the T-Bird Golf Special, which is buy three get one free, and you can also use our promo code for that as well, which brings, I believe, a dozen golf balls to around $11. So again, shout out to Union Green. Again, talking all things public golf, and even though Bandon is a resort, public golf that you can go play. So with that, take us to Bryson.
How hard did you push it? Till I black out? Yes. Numerous times, yes.
What's happening, Municipals? This is Ashton, and not Big Chris, and not Jack, and not Pax. We have a couple buddies. John Figueroa, nineto5golf, has been on before, as well as first-time guest Mr. Pat Cabrera. And these are two wonderful gentlemen who recently accompanied me to the one and only Bandon Dunes. And we are here to talk about these two gentlemen's experience, because next time we'll talk about some other courses on property and some other people's experience. But tonight we're going to dive into John and Pat's overall experience. And we're also going to dive deep, very deep, on Bandon Dunes and Bandon Trails, and also kind of cover the preserve as well. And yes, at the end, there will be rankings, and we'll see how spicy they are. But welcome, John. How's it going, my man?
Doing great, man. Just been looking forward to this day. For a few days since you asked me and Pat to come on and talk about these courses. It's been pretty cool the past couple days, kind of going through the yardage book and going through the scorecard and reliving some of the memories. So I'm excited to talk about it. And it's the first time I've had a chance to talk to anyone from the trip, really, other than in text form, talking about how we're still recovering. But yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah. And Pat, how's it going, my man?
Good, Ashton. Thanks for having me on. Really excited to be here for the first time, and very excited to be on with my bunkmate John, hashtag Team Legroom. So pretty excited to talk about, I don't want to get into the rankings yet, but talk about some of my favorites. So
And some of your least favorites, too.
And some of my least favorites, yeah.
Because the big thing we can promise as municipal style, we may not have the smartest takes, or we may not use the correct grammar, shout out Big Chris, but we're going to keep it real. And the thing is, we'll talk about it. I mean, Bandon Dunes, you all know, wonderful. We're going to highlight how great it was. But there's also some stuff that left to be desired that we'll cover as well. But for context, we're recording this on Wednesday, April 5th, yesterday for the Masters. We'll dive into picks in a second. But we're about, what, guys? It was about a month ago. So I think it's the perfect sweet spot of, we had the trip, we've all had some.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh God, don't. So we really had some time to kind of think and digest, and at least kind of my rankings, which again we'll talk later, have kind of been the same. But I think this is enough time where there's been space where we can really think about how we feel and kind of really have let those kind of feelings marinate. But I guess with Masters, real quick, guys. Who's your pick? We'll start here again. This is going to come out later, but we have to lock it in to see how smart you guys actually are.
This is a tough one. I think this weather coming in towards the what is it, Friday and Saturday is supposed to be a little brutal. It becomes anybody's game, and once that course really softens up, the shorter hitters can really get after it. But I don't know. I want to pick Rory. I really want to see him complete that Grand Slam, and I don't know. I think maybe just him taking a leadership role in the PGA is going to kind of give him that little bit of boost, and it might be time for him.
It would be. It's definitely what the heart wants, I think, for everybody, for sure.
Yeah, I was gonna say my heart wants Rory. My head is leaning towards Jon Rahm, because I think it feels to me every time he starts to slip a little bit under the radar, he ends up making a statement. And what better statement to make than winning the Masters?
Yeah.
But I also want to give a shout out to, I predict a top 5 for my boy, the Lord and Savior, Sung Jae Im, aka Sung Jesus Christ. My favorite player on tour, and he has a really good record here at this event. And if it is soft, I mean, he's known as the guy who fires at every flag. So I feel like
Yeah.
if it's soft and he has a decent putting week, like I think he could turn some heads.
Basically, do what Hideki did on Saturday 2 years ago.
Exactly.
Just hit it to the range where even Hideki can't miss.
Yeah.
And I think your Rom take is interesting because, and again, this is just storyline, but it seems like him, Scotty, well, really him and Scotty this year they've been playing whack-a-mole, and Scotty has been on the way up, and now we've all kind of forgotten about Rom, and now it just seemed like, well, here's Rom to kind of pop back up, right?
Yep.
And then it's like, if Rom were to win, then it's like, okay, well then for sure Scotty's going to win the PGA, right? So they've been sort of going back and forth, but I'm with you. But it is kind of bizarre how, last year we're like, Scotty certainly can't win in his, first time. And now it feels like everybody's picking Scotty. So I don't know. It's just going to be fun to watch. J-Day is my dark horse pick, not dark.
I like that.
Yeah.
And actually going back to some of our fan stuff we'll talk about, I considered putting some money on him at the North Bend Casino, but then I looked at Nick and I asked him. I said, "Well, how would I cash this out?" He's like, "Dude, you'd have to come back here." And I decided to not put any money down because I did not anticipate ever going back to that casino. So
I could have taken it.
If he wins, I'll look stupid. But there you go. Because Pat,
I'll be back.
Hell yeah, North Bend Casino. Yeah, but let's dive in. John, just to start us off, I guess, the good place over both of you is, what were your overall feelings heading into the trip? Like we kind of talked about with Hussey and Nick, I know we'd all consumed a shit ton of content, or Pat, maybe you hadn't. I think you said you actually hadn't. But what were kind of your feelings going into the trip, preparation levels, anticipation? How did you feel, John?
Yeah, well, I was this kind of a last minute sub, or I guess last minute relative to how long you guys have been planning the trip for. I believe I got
first in our
maybe.
hearts. First in
Yeah,
our hearts.
yeah, of course. I think I got invited probably around October, November. So didn't have as much time to kind of build up the anticipation in my mind, but it was still more than enough time. But really, my overall feelings is just I'd been on golf trips before, and I'd been on golf trips to quote unquote destination courses or resorts and stuff like that. But those all, no matter how nice they were, no matter what the designer, whoever designed the course, it always seemed like it was a resort with golf courses. And Bandon, from the moment we got there, it was like, no, this is a golf wonderland. And oh, by the way, you can stay on property if you want, but you're here to play golf. And it was just like, I mean, you roll in and you start to see holes one by one. They start appearing. You don't even know which course that hole belongs to, but you're just excited. You're trying to play the guessing game. Your head's on a swivel. And it was one of the few times where the hype and anticipation was matched or even exceeded. And that was before we even stepped on a course. So,
yeah. What about you, Pat?
Yeah, so very similar to John. I was a last minute addition, I think in January, right? The start of January. Being completely frank, I had just lost my best friend. He had just passed away to brain cancer. Rest in peace, Ryan. And it was a pretty rough day and evening. And then I got a text from Ashton that said, "Hey man, we're planning this Bandon trip and we'd love to have you. As a last minute addition, we gotta fill a spot." And I said, for sure. I think I had bought the flight maybe 20 minutes later after you sent that invite. Flight was purchased. I was like, I'm going. There's no point to say no to this right now. And so on top of that, I had to leading into it, I had to bail out of another vacation that I had. I was supposed to go to Arizona for the Waste Management Open, and I had to cancel that trip. So I was just kind of in a mindset of like, don't have any expectations. Like, I don't know why. I was like, Bandon might catch on fire. Like, that's just so stupid. But obviously, like, that's the mindset I had. I was like, anything can happen. Don't get excited about this trip yet. And then so I was not prepared whatsoever physically for this golf trip. This literally just destroyed my body and humbled me very quickly. But yeah, leading into it, I didn't start consuming the content literally until the plane ride out there. I was like, cool, it's real. We're going. We're heading to Bandon. I started watching the No Lane Up videos again, and I was like, cool, we're heading there. So yeah, it was really exciting leading into it, and once we got there, I was like, we're here. This is awesome.
Yeah, I feel similarly. I mean, obviously, for context for people, I think it's probably only gotten worse, but I booked this trip in late October of 2021, and the to get as much as we wanted, it was 16 months in advance. But the beautiful thing, shout out to John, our text thread said, Bandon 2023 with a wind emoji. And I think within one day, John had changed to Bandon 2025 with the sun emoji. We'll talk about the weather, but I think the big thing to me is the overall impression is the fact of, to Pat's point, I was prepared. I mean, I was the dipshit who was like trying to carry like a weighted backpack and walk around the hills to get prepared. But there are pros and cons. I mean, the trip was great, but we'll talk about the weather. It just kills you, it kills you physically. But it's the kind of place where like I was tired and I wasn't even home yet, and I was like, it's going to be really special to be back in this place in the near future with this same group of guys. And the camaraderie is, I think, what really kind of sticks a lot with me. And I thought that was going to be special, but when you actually go and experience it and can talk about it, and just the sheer amount of kind of, again, camaraderie, inside jokes, all this stuff that we built over a very short amount of time, um, was really, really special and cool. And, haven't quite done it yet. I don't think 2025 reservations are open yet, but we're doing it. I can't wait for it. But so now let's kind of dive into overall impressions. And I think we can take this anywhere we want. Like, we can talk about the golf courses. We're going to talk about the course in a second. Maybe we talk about the other stuff that really stuck with you guys, kind of. And I think instead of talk about everything, the things that really struck out to you that Bandon did great, and then the things that Bandon did that some room for improvement, we'll say. John, do you have some stuff that's top of mind?
So I gotta say the shuttle system at Bandon is about as close to seamless as you could have for a giant resort like that. It was pretty amazing how each morning or after a round, someone in the group would say, "Hey, you guys ready to go? It's time to get the shuttle." You dial the number, they pick up, and I mean, I think the longest we had to wait for a shuttle was maybe 2-3 minutes. Like, it was crazy. And the fact that they have so many people there to play golf with so many different tee times and timing all that. And I wasn't paying too much attention when I was in the shuttle because we were all talking and getting ready for a round, but I also didn't really notice too many other shuttles. It wasn't like there was a traffic jam. It just seemed like a seamless operation that they have. And it's one of those things that can go unnoticed, but when you realize that every single morning we were at the course with like plenty of time, we were never rushing. Everything was, and we were able to stay on that time track because of the shuttle and how easy it was to get around the entire resort. I gotta shout those guys out.
And also the component of, I mean, candidly, I mean, obviously you're going to spend plenty of money at Bandon, but it also saves us a lot of money because we flew in. We took a shuttle which was not affiliated with Bandon Dunes, which we can talk about the shuttle experience in a little bit. This is, I guess, not a family program, but I think we're going to keep this between
Don't
the
worry,
mustard and the
it's funny
mayo.
no matter who you are. I don't care who you are.
Yeah,
It's
I don't
funny.
care who you are. That's funny.
yeah. We had a shuttle driver who was a little bit inappropriate, we'll say. Um,
Yeah.
but I think that the shuttle service, it prevents you from needing a car. right? Like otherwise we would have needed, I don't know, like we couldn't have called an Uber, but we had eight of us and we would have needed a car, or we could I guess we could have piled in our buddy JD's who drove. But it just means that once you get there, you're taken care of from transportation purposes. And I think that's big. So what about you, Pat? What kind of stood out to you as a positive?
Yeah, I have to acknowledge the shuttle service as well, and the operations that go into there. Having worked in the golf industry, to John's point, it's incredibly seamless, and there's no traffic jams. Yet, how many employees are actually working there the entire time? Um, but I mean, really, just what stood out to me was the whole time you're focused on golf and enjoying your time with your friends. There's not a whole lot else you really have to worry about. I mean, the fact that you can just send your rain gear in to go get taken care of and dried and have it returned to you the next day, like that's incredible. I mean, there's and shoe warmers. Our room didn't have it, but apparently there's shoe dryers. We were too efficient to need those, I guess. But yeah, I mean, overall, I think you have to really just give a shout out to the teams there and the operations, because I mean, for how many people there are, and wherever you go, there's somebody right there, to answer a question or to take care of you, or the caddies are there ready to go. It's so seamless from start to finish. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the two things for me to call out are one, I think the rooms were phenomenal. Like my whole focus was to
Absolutely.
make this trip as affordable as possible. That was my number one goal. And I called, and when I made the reservation, I was like, "Hey, what is your cheapest room on property?" She's like, "This one." I'm like, "Do you have availability for those rooms?" She said, "Yes." So we stayed in the cheapest rooms on property, and y'all can chime in. The rooms were amazing. I mean, there was a fireplace, there was a refrigerator. They were really big, and I think that's important because we have four, we had two king beds and we have two people in each bed. There's all of our shit, right? There's like
Yeah.
and everything spreads out. So you got your travel bag, your golf shoe bag, your golf balls. It just spreads out everywhere. And you really need all of that room, right? They did really smart things in the bathrooms. They separated where like there was a toilet on one bathroom and a shower on another. So when you're getting
That was
ready in the morning,
huge.
it's not like, yeah,
Yeah.
like just
That was
they're
really
thinking
big.
ahead with that stuff. And to your point, Pat, tough scene that you guys didn't have one, but the shoe dryer, it's just little touches that make it like really, and the bed super comfortable. Like the
Yeah. The
beds
I
were,
was gonna say the
beds were
bed was
great.
comfy as hell.
yeah,
Yeah. We actually did. What did we do? We threw balls to decide who slept with who, and
yeah,
so John and I mean, we'll point out that JD and Dash, who we roomed with, are much taller and larger than we both are, and we're a little bit on the shorter side. So we had plenty of room in our beds. But to your point, four people in a room and still having enough space to even like, so it just dumped rain on us and we had to pull all of our clubs out of our bag, dry everything out. We still had room to walk around. We were comfortable watching TV and everything. And so, yeah, the
Getting
rooms
a
were
recovery in.
phenomenal. Oh yeah, we had the recovery stations all throughout the room. So
yeah,
I mean, yeah, we took up a lot of, we used up every inch of the space, but it never felt over the top crowded.
yeah. And even though I guess the only thing, and I'm sorry, Hussey, but to do your Kermit the Frog voice, Hussey was like, "I'm pretty sure these aren't king size beds. I sleep in a king size bed, and it doesn't feel that way to me." So I don't know. Like Hussey just kind of like he'd fall asleep and he'd be fall like on his basically kind of like looking at me on his like at his chin as he's falling asleep. But I thought they were king size beds. I sleep in a queen bed, and I felt quite a bit bigger than my bed. But
I
hey,
felt like a king.
I felt like a king.
ah, you guys are kings.
Yeah.
Granted, I'm not used to sleeping with the CEO of Singapore Airlines, Chris Hussey. So, you know, who's to say? The other thing I want to shout out that I think is huge is I know this isn't like rocket science, but I love the fact that when you check in as yourself, meaning that throughout the entire property, whether I swear to God, whether it's a Bandon energy ball, whether it's a Gatorade, whether it's a beer, whether it's a head cover, all you got to do is I'd say Moss 511 and it goes directly on my tab. Because one of the things I hate most is that game around like you're at dinner and like what did you order and trying to like just itemize everything where it's just so nice for like if you go in for lunch you put it on Figueroa 512 or Cabrera 512 or Moss 511. Just the fact of like how they separate it, I think makes it so much easier. So at the end of the trip, there's no split wise, there's none of that. It just goes on your card, and I think that makes the experience so much easier. And yeah, you're spending a lot of money, but you think about that kind of at the end. You never have to pull your wallet out. You shouldn't fucking bring your ID because the one time you don't bring an ID, the lady asks to card you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, because
And,
we
and
wanted
then
to
gives you
bring
trivia.
we wanted to bring one person under 21 in our group of what, averaging 32 years old, 33.
yeah, yeah. And look, we always want to look young, but like, I don't think I look that young anymore. Like, I don't think this is the face of a 19-year-old. But hey, who's to say? But I think that's huge. And with that too, also, if you need cash out for caddies, you literally go into any pro shop and you say, "Hey, I need $200 in cash, Moss 511," and they literally pull out the cash, hand it to you, and then that goes on your bill. Which again, that's massive.
Yeah.
But I think that like logistically is a really, really simple but really, really nice touch.
Yeah. Again, it's just seamless from start to finish. The moment you check in to the moment you check out, you're not having to worry about a whole lot. And also, to your credit too, Ashton, I mean, you planned a lot for us, and having the tee times, like, I didn't worry about what my tee time was. We kind of just all went as a group and showed up at a course, and so I didn't have to worry about tee times too much or really worry about a whole lot of anything. So, I mean, shout out you, Ashton, for planning this. That was pretty well done.
Yeah, thanks,
Yeah, that's
man.
kind
And
of a
that's where
big
I got to give a shout
concern.
out to them. I mean, literally when you call and you tell them what you want to do, I mean, their customer service is on the phone is the best customer experience I've ever had in my life. I mean, it's unbelievable what they help. So I mean, I had to do a lot of the stuff around like finding our shuttle, that kind of stuff. But like they make it so easy. Where they know where they're like, for example, if you're teeing off at 8:30, they're like, hey, the longest you're going to be at the course is here. We can guarantee you're going to finish. Like they have all that stuff on file. And so like when they made our second tee times, granted, we're kind of pushing on a couple of those tee times, but like they were like, you will. But like they also said during our time here, it was pre daylight savings. They're like, we promise you will finish both rounds. You may not have a big break. We had enough time to get to the next course, grab a sandwich, and kind of get going again. But they knew everything around like, last guaranteed finish and that stuff, which makes booking your trip really, really easy. Sorry, what were we saying, John?
I was just gonna say, I like the best way I can put it is just worry free. Like how Pat was saying,
Yeah,
I just think all you really have to think about is playing golf when you're there,
yeah,
and it's pretty incredible that they have it down. So they have it down so well like that.
yeah. And now on the other side of the coin, things that we room for improvement. I think we're probably going to all have the same answer. But John, do you want to lead us off with some room for improvement for Bandon Dunes?
Yeah, so I like food. I don't know. I'm probably like a beginner foodie, but I I was just really really disappointed um, with the food we ate, and I can't even really put my finger on it as to why it was so lackluster. The I guess the first thing that comes to mind is, at least for myself personally, almost every piece of food I had on the property, with the exception of the breakfast buffet, was terribly, terribly underseasoned and was lacking in a lot of flavor. Um, yeah, I it's one of those things where you think it would, they get so much right, right? They do so much right and they nail so much stuff, and then to miss on something like the food. And I'd heard very good things about the food leading up to it. I'd heard, you got to try the meatloaf, you got to try this, you got to try this, and I really like wasn't thrilled with the food we had on the property. That was probably maybe the only time where I wish we had a car or like a way to go into town of Bandon to try and get some maybe more local flavor or less resorty flavor. I don't, it wasn't even resort food. It was like very like, it was home style kind of comfort food, pub food. Um, but it just didn't hit. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I can very much echo that. I think every single one of us left there going like me on the food the entire time, and it was. I will give credit; they had themes for each restaurant, and we had dinner reservations every night, and it was cool to kind of be like, okay, cool. We kind of have an idea of what we're getting here. You know, the steakhouse, we know what all know we're pretty much going to get steaks. But even, you know, the steakhouse, I was just kind of like, meh, this is okay. You know, I was more excited for Hussey's wine, truly, than any of the food, and it was just like, okay, cool, let's get some sustenance in us. But um, it was most of the time, most of the dinners, I left there going like, okay, like I can't wait for breakfast or I can't wait for lunch, you know, especially at Trails. But that was kind of just, you know, again, to echo it, everything is so good the entire time that stood out so strongly of what the heck's going on. Like, you could put a McDonald's next to Bandon, and I'm probably gonna walk there to go get some food some nights. Unfortunately.
Yeah, and the other thing too, to be very practical, the other thing that I found concerning, maybe it's too aggressive of a word, but I think 7 out of the 8 of us like woke up and had some sort of like, to use the child's term, like crummy tummy, I guess. And that's just like a tough scene, right? Because like I remember, granted, I mean, I guess we can make mention of Sheep Ranch, but when we're waiting to go out, like I had ordered a breakfast biscuit, but I was playing this game where I was literally looking at my watch and I was like, okay, we're going off in like 25 minutes. I feel like I'm gonna shit my pants, but I need to eat this food. But like you're playing this mental math, and like it was the revenge of whatever I had the night before, or the like. It's just one of those things where I don't think I actually had one meal on property where I ate it and I felt satisfied and it just kind of settled. Even like when I had the burger, I was sort of like, it just. So again, my thing is like, I'm with you, John. Like, just season it correctly, make it basic. But for the love of God, don't make it where I'm about to tee off at this fucking golf course. And I mean, literally, I'm sorry to put Pat out there because I'm not gonna talk about this.
No,
Like,
please.
Pat didn't play the last round
I
because
couldn't. Yeah, I mean,
of his stomach.
Going out, I was like, okay, I've gone to the bathroom again. TMI. I think I went to the bathroom like 5 times already that morning. Our tea time was what, at 9:20,
Yeah.
and I was like, so I'm sitting there 2 minutes before our tea time, and I was like, when's the closest bathroom on Old Mac? When's the first bathroom?
Yeah,
If you're
it's
thinking
not
that
good.
going into I was like, guys, and
I
it's
think the
raining
answer is
too.
like at the top of 7, and like it's not.
It's not. I'm not making that. And so I'm like, okay, I can't make that. Do I go get toilet paper and put it in my golf bag? Like, that's what, like, no. Unfortunate.
So
Very unfortunate.
When it's under seasoned and it kind of wrecks your stomach, it's a pretty bad combo. I mean, some of the stuff was fine. Like, the last day I got the bacon, lettuce, tomato, avocado sandwich. That's okay, right? And then the other thing too, just so people know, a lot of people we trust, like for example, shout out Marcus Chang, who's been going there forever. Marcus told me we did the pod 3 years ago with him. He's like, Bandon Trails, best restaurant on property, eat there a bunch. Well, when I called to make the dinner reservations, they told me that, and the lady did not know why. They're not doing dinner at Trails anymore. She's like, oh, do you want to rent it out? I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, well, you can rent it out. She's like, it's a $12,000 minimum. And I was like, no, we're okay. But they do they do lunch, and it's like some to go stuff. But that was our favorite thing we all ate. But like, if we do it again, I would just eat at Bandon Trails for every dinner, but they're not currently open. So again, the food, we don't have to keep harping on this, but the food is just confusing because that's the one thing after you play, they nail the beer. They got the Bandon Pale Ale. They got the Sheep Ranch Lager. I don't know if they make that on property, but they have these, just classic beers there that are cheap and good. But then it's like you get the food and it's like, I just want it to fill me up and not make it where I have, Pat's like wondering if he can, and he literally didn't play our last round at Old Mac because of his stomach. Like that stinks.
Yeah.
That really stinks.
Yeah.
I do want to, I mean, all 3 of us have pointed it out, but I just want to make sure because we are pointing out the faults of the food at Bandon, but the Trails restaurant was like
top
notch. The food that I ate there, I would like happily pay for it like any restaurant. Like I thought the menu selection of items that they had was very, very well done and well put together, and the quality of it was great. It was weird because the quality of the food, the taste, everything was so startlingly different from everything else on the resort.
Mm-hmm.
And I think how good Trails was made me like go back and realize just how shitty the food was
It was
at the rest of the
confusing.
places.
Super confusing because
Yeah,
like how
very.
can trails be so good yet we all were like, what the heck is going on with all the other ones? But to counter that again, I know we're talking bad, but the service of the waiters were great. I
Yeah.
mean, I will
Oh,
give
yeah.
a shout out to them because even though we were kind of, like,
Except for
meh,
the Pacific Grill, that guy
that was
did not know what planet we were on. Like,
happy birthday, John.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. We told this guy it was John's birthday because there was a birthday party nearby. But no, but like a good example is there. We ordered the lamb ragu. It is the worst thing I can remember eating ever. And at the end of the meal, I asked him for a loaf of bread and a yellow Gatorade to go, and he didn't stop to wonder, why is he doing that? It's like, yo, because I'm fucking hungry, and like I'm worried about, I need the Gatorade in case this goes the wrong direction.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, I'm happy to do that. It's like, yeah, I bet you are. Like, so again, too much on the food stuff, but just no, guys. I mean, it's funny because I mean, I heard from people I trust, like my buddy Levi, shout out Levi. He was like, you know, everyone's like, and again, there's some stuff that was great, like the Sheep Ranch breakfast was awesome. Breakfast usually was good. I know Nick is going to come on next week and appropriately yell about how there wasn't enough breakfast burritos. But some, I mean, the Bandon energy balls are awesome. The breakfast was great.
Yeah.
But there's just some stuff to be desired where after 36 holes, you just want a good, comfortable, filling meal that's not going to make you feel like shit. And we essentially went 0 for 4. Basically everywhere we went. So
I will say the lunch we had at the main lodge after we called it early on sheep.
Yeah,
that lunch was
that was
pretty
good.
I feel like
Yeah.
I might have had the BLTA that day
Yeah,
as well. So or the
That lunch was
combos,
good.
so.
And their fries were for some reason better there.
Honestly, I think it was more. It was mostly the dinner.
Yeah.
That was just very, very lacking, and it. I mean, honestly, probably it stood out even more because that's at the end of the day. We just finished playing 36 holes. We're hungry. We're tired. We're getting a little bit drunk, and bad food
drunk
really puts a damper on all that.
Yeah, it really does. But to get to the golf, so we're going to talk today primarily about dunes and trails. But to start off, because I mean this doesn't really factor the ranking, but very quickly, guys, wanted to get your thoughts on preserve. Like as for me, it's like cool. It's a 13-hole Core Crenshaw par 3 sitting on the cliffs, pretty hard to beat. But just kind of give the people a quick summary of your experience at the preserve, John.
Well, it's the first. I haven't played many par 3 courses really, but it's by far it's the first one I've ever played where there were holes there that you could put on a normal 18-hole course, and they would have held their own or even stood out on that course. So I think having designers like Core Crenshaw making that course, having the location where it is, it was a great way to kick off the trip because you were getting a taste of Bandon without getting the full kick your teeth in of links golf. We got a little bit of elements, we got hailed on, we got rained on at certain points during that round. And the best part was we got to play as a ninesome. I think the fact that they allow that and they kind of them allowing us to play as a ninesome fits into the whole ethos of that place, and specifically the preserve, where you're not grinding for a score. You're there to enjoy views. You're there to hit some pretty difficult shots and daring shots, but mostly you're there to enjoy the time with people in your group and just to soak everything in. I think that was the perfect. Looking back, I think that was the best possible way we could have started the trip instead of just jumping onto an 18-hole course. I think getting that nice introduction and us all playing together, because obviously the rest of the trip we're going to be divided into 2 groups. Us all getting to play together and experience all those things together really added to it a lot. So I really enjoyed the preserve. I thought it stood out even more than I thought it would.
Yeah, and we should make mention. Big Chris got to join us for that. So when he says 9, Big Chris joined us for the preserve and for dinner, which was great. He drove down from Salem, which a lot of time in the car, but it was super good to see him. So
I
Pat,
thought
what
he
about
just
you?
finished caddying in the morning round based on his outfit, but
he did look like a Bandon looper in his Gore-Tex.
Yeah,
I mean,
he
Big
did.
C, low-key, like you saw some loopers, and you're like, Big C might just need to. Well, I guess
could.
I'm gonna drive by shoot you, Big Chris. He needs to be able to like walk and not have his hips pop out of his body, to probably be a looper at Bandon. But there's a lot of burly boys out there doing looping for sure.
Yeah, Yeah, there was.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, Preserve was rad. I was um, very, again, I didn't have a lot of, I kept my expectations pretty low coming into the trip, and I didn't really have an idea what the Preserve was. Like, you guys talked about it. I was very, very surprised coming into it with just how many fun and creative tee shots you got to hit on that. Um, playing as a nine some where there's balls everywhere. You don't really know which one's yours. I thankfully played a yellow ball that day, which worked out very well in my favor. But it was just a ton of fun. I didn't know everybody right away, and so getting to know people a little bit, kind of breaking the ice. You're grabbing a drink up on that little turn house up top on the top of the hill, and one of the most memorable parts for me on that was all of us hitting 9 putts all at once on, I can't remember the whole number, but downhill, I think, 5. It was, we all hit putts at the exact same time. So it's not like we each took turns hitting a putt. We hit a regular shot, and then we all hit a putt at the exact same time, and that was pretty special. That was when, everybody's settling in, we're goofing around. Shortly after is when it hailed on us. So we got the full experience there. Sun, rain, hail. It was pretty fun.
I think that's when I almost made it, and John actually putted it into a bunker that was about Granted,
I wasn't going to bring
Hussey
that
was
up.
boxing him out. Hussey was boxing him out. I think it was Hussey's fault.
Ashton, you're a bad guy.
I am.
Yeah, no. It was a little cramped.
Yeah. I sent him a meme of a guy getting a hole in one on there, and I said, kind of a little dig at John too. I was like, "Hey, how's that bunker looking?"
Walking down the hill and John's feverishly raking like a bunker that like poor Crenshaw. Probably like, no one's ever.
Everyone's in here. Yeah, that bunker probably hasn't been raked in years, but
no. They're like, well, John, this was an afterthought. Out here and I was building Preserve. That's my really bad Bill Core impression. But yeah, I'm with you guys. Like, it's just, I know that people say it's a great way, if you're going to have like a rest day or something. But I think, literally, we got there, dropped our stuff, and walked there immediately. And I think it's the best way to start your trip. And to your point, Pat, I didn't even think about it until you said it. But, because like Jake, me and Nick's buddy, who became all of our buddy, like Jake didn't know anybody other than me and Nick. Like, it's a great way to just get everybody together and, build some camaraderie early. And then just, again, super cool to play a Core Crenshaw par 3. And we should mention, I think many of y'all know this, but it's expensive. I think it was $80, but all that money goes to, like the Bandon Preserve Trust. Basically, it's to there's protected land there. So Bandon's they're not putting that in their pockets. That's literally, view it as it's like your charitable donation to kind of Bandon. So it makes it feel a little bit better because in your head, you're like, wait, my replay rate's 95 to go play Bandon Trails again. And I just paid 80 for Bandon Preserve. But, I think it makes it worth it. But let's dive in. First course we actually played. I didn't draw it up this way initially, but I think that starting off at OG Bandon was a pretty great place to start because for those of you who have not been, you got kind of the main clubhouse, kind of the main area, and literally you walk out the back and take a right, and there is the first tee at Bandon Dunes. And so I think that's kind of a great way to kick us off. So John, hit us with kind of your overall impressions of OG Bandon.
Yeah, so OG Bandon the best way I can describe it is just a fun course. It's beautiful to look at. The first hole is almost a little bit unassuming because you're teeing off. It's a slight dogleg right. So if you're hitting driver, you don't really see where your driver ends up. You're kind of trusting your caddy. And then you get to the second shot and it's just a blind elevated shot up to this huge green. And I feel like it's just, having gone through the entire trip and played all the courses, that first hole was almost a perfect introduction to the strategy and the thought that you're going to have to put into your rounds at Bandon. The entire resort, not just OG Bandon. And that opening hole, to me, I still feel like that might be one of the better opening holes that I've ever played, just because of the emotions. We played in 2 separate groups, but I was part of the leadoff group, so we had everybody around the first tee, a lot of emotion. Everyone's excited, rearing to go. And as soon as the starter tells you you're ready to go, it's just a pump of adrenaline. And you're hitting the shot, you don't know where it's going to land, and then you get there, and then you don't know where you're hitting it to, and it's a really short, concise, perfect introduction to Bandon and how you're going to have to think and play, and it just very quickly tells you like, no, this is going to be a very different round of golf to what you usually play.
What about you, Pat?
Yeah, I mean, I can't agree with that more. It's for me again. It was our opening round, first shots. I was
Actually, we were all playing together. It's us three plus Dash. That works well. I just
no,
realized.
you guys,
Jake.
yeah, you guys had Jake. I was in the second
Oh.
group. So for that one, I think it was
Never
me,
mind.
JD, Hussey, and Nick. Yeah, um, I. It's tough. I looking back at it, I actually respect the course a lot more and like it a lot more than I had originally kind of thought at first, because it was the first course. I mean, we overdosed on golf, and I kind of forgot about it a little bit just because it was the first one we played. But that opening tee shot's amazing. It's just a very kind of intimidating start. I think that second approach shot coming into that green, you're like, oh, okay, this is kind of this is going to be the course we're playing. And I mean, weather was god awful for us for the first couple of holes. We had awful weather for a good portion of the trip, but I think from like hole 3 and on, it ended up being a ton of fun and pretty decent weather, windy, of course, but it's just visually appealing from start to finish. Looking back at it, and there's quite a few intimidating shots, but they're fair if you know where to not miss it at. You know, it's a pretty attackable course, and I played it pretty well, but I think I still shot 85. I felt like I shot a 78, shot an 85, and so it goes to show you that there's some spots where if you miss it, you missed it, and it's not going to be fun for you.
Yeah, I think what's interesting, and again, trying not to get into the ratings, but what John and I were talking about before we press record, it's kind of incredible that OG Bandon is the first course, because what John said earlier that really resonates with me is it really has everything in a way that the other courses kind of almost by design don't, right? Like Trails is up in the woods, right? And Sheep Ranch is like, it's not a super hard golf course, but it's like right on the water. And the thing about Bandon is I think what really helps it stand up is the fact of it has a little bit of everything, right? There's holes kind of in the trees, and there's the walkways aren't quite like trails, but there's some where you walk along those mulch paths. Like it's kind of crazy because you would almost think if you inverted it, where it's like Bandon's the last one, we're like, cool, David McClay Kidd saw trails and he saw pack and he saw sheep, and he's like, let me kind of pull all this together into one property. But it actually worked the opposite way, and I think that is something that's I didn't really process until John said it, but I think that's kind of the magic. And then I think, like y'all said, I mean, I think that one of my favorite parts of Bandon is the initial stretch, because one, it's a dog leg to the right, very handshake, like you're probably not going to miss the fairway. But a good example is, I was, to your point, like nervous, and I think the fact that like all your buddies are right there and it's such a tee shot that like everyone's kind of watching, I got up over it and I was like, oh wow, like I haven't been this I actually knew I have not been this nervous over a golf shot since I yipped a putt at number 3 on Sunday at the cookout last year, when Big Chris, I literally missed a 2-footer at Soul Park, and I was like, oh God, like this is all in my head. That's as nervous as I've been over a golf shot in about a year. But then again, I hit kind of a block left, and I had like 8-iron in, where I think Dash took it, John, I think it was you, took it, way to the right and had flip wedge. But again, how much would it take off the tee? 2 is like, I don't really care what you have to do. Like, you got to end up here hit a grown man or grown women golf shot, right? A 6-7 iron over a force carry. 3 is not a super hard par 5, but a pretty intimidating tee shot. And then you get to 4 where you turn the corner and suddenly there's the ocean. And then number 5 is the hardest hole in the course. And it's like, what a way to kind of start. It's one of those things, to y'all's point. In the moment, you're sort of just like, your heart's still going and you're like, okay, we're playing golf. But looking back, it's like, holy shit, like what a stretch of golf holes,
Yeah.
and then you can keep going. I mean, really all good. But like that starting, looking back, it's like what a first 5 holes to kind of get you going. Everything from an easy first tee shot to, again, number two, where it's like, can you hit like a chippy 6 iron, and then John's playing it up, putting it off the back, and it's coming off the back slope, way back super fast. But again, it kind of hits everything to get you into the course, to really kind of show you, to your point, John, what's going to come over the entire 5 days. And the fact that McClay Kidd didn't have that foresight, right? He's building one golf course. But the fact that like the first few holes kind of gives you a sense of what the whole place is going to be, that's just pretty magical.
Yeah, that was on number 4. That was when it finally hit me. Like when you walk down onto that towards that green and it started going towards your approach shot, you're like, holy shit. That was when I was like, holy shit, I'm at Bandon. Like I am here. I am playing this. We're on the ocean. And that was when it all finally sunk in to me, was on that approach shot at 4. And I mean, yeah, just those opening 5 are just absolutely incredible.
Yeah, the four definitely stood out to me. But hearing you even just rattle off those first few holes, Ashton, just reminds me of how strong of a start it is. 3, I actually thought was, like you said, it's not the most difficult par 5 in the world, but the tee shot is visually very stunning. You have a lot of bunkers there that they're just far enough that your visual deception kind of plays with you, thinking, am I going to reach those? Are those in play? I ended up actually driving it to where I was about a foot away from going into one of those bunkers. And because of that, the lips of those bunkers were so tall that I kind of had to shape my shot around the bunker and couldn't really go for it. I had to lay up. So just those little details of the land movement. I know it's like a kind of a catch-all term, but just the fairways, how even the flatter holes were anything but flat. There might not have been that much elevation change, but the rumples in the fairway and the slopes that your ball could hit off of and the little pockets that you could find that would either help you or make or hurt you on the approach shot was just it kept coming. It was just, there was never a sleeper hole there's never a snooze hole on Bandon. And that's kind of one of the things, after a trip, as Pat said, we had kind of OD'd on golf, and we did some kind of quick fire rankings when we were going to the airport. And for myself, I had OG Bandon last, but it was more so just because we had played so much golf, and the other courses they have very, very standout features about them. They each have their like a very noticeable identity. And the thing about OG Bandon is it's not that it has no identity, but its identity is kind of the entire ethos of links golf, the entire links golf philosophy and the thinking behind that. And I just think what Dave McClay Kidd did was, I mean, at least for the small amount of courses that I've played in my lifetime, that's the course that's come the closest to nailing what I think of when I think of links golf and actually playing with the ball on the ground and using the elements to your favor.
And the fact too of looking back, I mean, obviously Trails is all kind of inland, but I think when like what a lot of people kind of fixate on, I think, is the inland holes of a course, right? And I think that like the more I've thought about it, the more like the inland holes at Bandon are extremely good, right? I know that like Chris, our caddy, when we played number 7, which is the hole that it's like an enormous fairway and there's kind of this huge false front over on the right side. Chris was saying that's not her favorite hole, but I think candidly, with all respect to Chris, like that's probably because she sees it like 600 times a year as a caddy. But I think that's a hole where you get up there and you're like, whoa, and like to have like you've just overdosed on the coast. Then you hit your drive and walk up to your approach shot and go, whoa, that's pretty compelling. And then the next hole, number 8, I just love it because, playing that game where like it's perfect bunker placement for where we all as amateurs hit it. Where it's like, I remember asking, like, but also it's by the weather, right? I remember I told Chris last time, I was like, hey, that fairway bunker in the middle last time I flew it by like 5 yards. And she was like, well, it's colder. She's like, I don't really think that's in play. But there was just there's a strategic component of like the inland holes kept you really captivated, where this will be for next time. But like, I think that like some of the inland holes at Pacific Dunes were like some of the worst holes I played on property. Like they're memorably not memorable. Where I never felt that way at Bandon, and even like the par five number nine, right? Like it's not rocket science, but like there's not a hole out there where you're just like, okay, like what's next? You want to get back out to the coast, of course, but the inland holes are incredibly captivating, especially as someone who's going to see it, you know, twice every 2 years. Again, I can understand if a caddy, you have a more refined take, and I'm sure our feelings will change over time, but the inland holes are really, 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 really good. Um, just I don't know. It's like I think those holes like 7 and 8 are pretty underrated.
Yeah, yeah, the inland holes, to John's point, the rumples all throughout the fairway, the inland holes are just flat, but you're not going to have a flat shot the entire way. But then even kind of where it finishes, so you go inland, right? And then you kind of come back out towards the coast, and that finish of 16, 17, 18, I thought was a really fun finish looking back at it. I think myself, my mindset started going to, okay, what are we going to get for lunch? Let's start switching shoes out. Like, let's get ready for the second 18. And so my mind was kind of there when I was playing it. But looking back, I mean, 16 is just such a fun hole. We had to play it dead into the wind. Um, so it played very differently than it does during the summer, and that was hard. I ended up hitting just the small little sliver up in the front on that kind of right fairway just below the bunkers. I luckily hit that. I hit a pretty bad slice there, and but I still had, I think, like a 9 iron into the wind. Had club up 2.5 coming into it, but that's such a fun hole. And then 17 is just kind of like, what the heck, with this giant drop off cliff off to the side, and then you're finishing out on 18 where it's a reachable par five, and you get to have some fun. I got to watch Hussey, stripe a beautiful 3 wood right to the front of the green and make an awesome birdie. He had a really good look for an eagle putt too. So I mean, just that finish of it is a ton of fun. So from start to finish, looking back at it, I feel bad for ranking it so low, because it does encompass everything about it, and I just feel bad for ranking it so low.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, when I was thinking about the rumples and the movement in the fairway, 7 was the first hole that came to mind, because I remember it is a giant fairway. It's impossible to miss even if you tried, and all 4 of us in our group hit the fairway, and I think we all had 4 different lies. Like I had a hanging lie, balls below my feet. Someone had a ball above their feet. Somebody managed to get it perfectly on a flat spot, where they were almost level with the green because the green's a little bit elevated. So it's just something like that where like 4 people can hit good drives in the fairway, but we're all having 4 completely different experiences coming into that hole. It's awesome. And that just shows that you're never going to have the same experience playing that hole over and over again. And it's part of the greatness of links course design, I guess, is that the fact that they rely more on the elements, and there's a lot more dynamics in play than just like, here's a water hazard, here's a green, get it over. And it just makes it so much fun.
Yeah. John, you were saying that you mentioned before you press record that you felt like there was a lot of underrated holes at Bandon. So do you want to highlight some of those that you feel like, were like, that you looked back and kind of retroactively were like, holy shit, those actually kind of stood out more than you thought?
Yeah. So the one for me is, I mean, looking back, it's probably not underrated because it is one of the holes that's on the coast, but I guess I underrated standing on the tee. I kind of underrated how fun it was going to be to play, and that would be number 5. I thought visually it has it might be like the best example of visual deception on that course, just with those mounds in the middle and how it looks like you have nowhere to hit it, but you actually have everywhere to hit it, and you actually don't even need to hit driver. Um, I think I hit driver just because I hit the ball pretty low, so I was worried that if I hit 3 wood, I was gonna catch a little thin, just hit it right into the middle of one of those mounds and be screwed. So I hit driver, and I kind of babied it, and I ended up running through the fairway into the fairway bunker, and I had a pretty interesting shot there. And that shot in itself was really cool too, because you're kind of hitting into, like, if I remember correctly, that green is almost kind of surrounded by a lot of things. So you're almost kind of hitting into like an amphitheater sort of, and a little bit of an elevation going up to that green. And I just think that hole stuck with me. And I didn't even, like I said, I hit an okay drive, went into the bunker, hit it on the green and two putted. It wasn't like anything flashy, but just looking back, thinking about, I had to think so much on the tee shot. I had to think so much on the approach, and the green didn't look like it sloped that much at all. And then when I hit my putt, I like damn near went all the way across the green because it broke so hard. It's just those subtleties that it's just the sum is, I'm going to butcher the phrase, so shout out Big Chris, but the sum is bigger than its parts or whatever. However that phrase goes. That hole, if you were to look at it on a drone, you'd be like, on a drone aerial, you would think like, okay, it's a shortish par 4. There's a couple mountains in the middle, but when you're on the ground playing it, your mind is engaged so much. That's the one that stood out to me the most. And then 17, like Pat said, I think that's might have been my favorite looking tee shot on the property, with that giant drop off. It's so intimidating. It looks so far away. It makes you feel like you have to hit a big draw to avoid it, just to stay away from that side. And then the approach was really cool. Kind of like the green was a little bit elevated, but there's a ridge, so that if you went past the flag, it kind of was almost had an infinity green effect to it, which I thought was really cool. And those two holes stood out the most to me, as far as obviously DJ mentioned it in the tour sauce about Bandon, about number 5, about thinking about that tee shot. And it wasn't until I was actually standing on that tee shot that I actually fully appreciated what he was talking about, because you walk in the fairway and you look back and you realize this is probably one of the easier tee shots on the property. But when you're standing on the tee, it literally looks like you have a 10-yard window to hit it in. And that's what I think Bandon does so well.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, what I think underrated, I think the whole, because I played it twice now, because I played there last, or 2021 with the Chris. Number 13, the par 5. I think it's funny how there's so much room off the tee, but I mean, clearly John was there for this. Like, even though I've played it, like, I find that hole so disorienting. Like, literally, like, Chris was using the restroom and they were like, "Oh, where to hit it?" And I point out to where I thought I said the green was, and it turns out that was the flag for 17. And so
Yeah,
she
I
was like,
remember that.
"No, no, yeah." She's like, "No, no, no." Like, the one time I'm gonna add some context, it's incorrect, but it's incredibly disorienting because there's like reeds over on the left side, which is, I think, the only time on property you kind of even see. It's like a very specific type of plant and water that you only see at that one area. And then the way the green
I
is,
saw
like
it a lot on that
anything,
hole.
yeah, I know. And then anything basically to the right of the green is going to fall off this gigantic slope. And then I don't know. It's just one of those holes where um, it's just really confusing, kind of where you're going. And that's one of those holes where you're lucky to have a caddy, because there was one where I was like, "So Chris, is the line this?" And she was like 80 yards to the right of that. And it's like, oh shit! Like, I had no clue. So I think 13 is one of those holes that's really fun. And then I think 14 as well. I mean, I think 14 is another hole where it's like a dog leg. It's a good example of options. It's a kind of a, I guess you can call it a dog leg to the right, but you can basically in the summertime aim it at the green and almost drive it. You can go way out to the left, and I kind of hit a slice driver over there, but I had like a perfect angle into the green. And so I think that those are kind of both examples of, you can make it what, I mean, it's true of much of the golf course, but you can kind of do with it as you want. If you want to go for the green and try to bite off a bunch, you can. If you want to go way out to the left and hit a 9-iron of perfect angle, you can do that as well. But to your point, John, a lot of visual, not intimidation, but there's a lot of like, where am I going? Like, what am I trying to do
Just
here?
yeah, like confusion almost.
Yeah,
Like,
and
not
I
really
think
to scare you, but just to kind of make you a little unsure.
yeah, and this is, you can say for better or for worse. I think for worse, most of the golf that I play is pretty much like, I hit driver here, I hit 9-iron here, I hit driver here, I hit 7-iron here. There's not a lot of like, well, I could do this, and I could do this, and I could do this. And I think that's kind of, again, what I found so captivating is, just on our trip in general, I was hitting a lot of like chippy sixes from like 155, and like it really sort of activated. To be clear, I'm not an artiste, but it like if it's the no laying up thing around like artist or mechanic, like I'm a fucking mechanic. I'm like, 140, let's hit a 140. Like I try to kind of keep it pretty stock. But the fun thing about Bandon in general, but especially Dunes, is like you're kind of tempted to be like, cool, I can hit like a chippy six or I can hit an eight up in the air. There's so many options. And I think that, those underrated holes like were 13 or 14 where you're up there, you're like on the tee and you're like, I'm not really sure what to do. Getting your brain firing. There's a lot of that, I think, at Bandon Dunes.
Yeah, I felt like it, but while it can, I felt like the rest of the courses were a lot more confusing for me personally. I felt like this was kind of right in front of you. You know, it wasn't as deceiving as I think it's like four on trails or something like that, but it's like everything is pretty much gettable if you can see it. You just have to really respect your misses. And like the perfect example of that is 15, the par 3, where you can go long left, you're in the shit. If you're at center right at the flag, you're going into what the website claims is the deepest bunker on the course, is the bunker on the right side of 15. And or
I
just
can
like that
confirm.
whole gully that whole gully, because I went left and then ended up sculling it, and then now I'm in the bottom right in the gully down below on the right side and having to chip back up, and I'm just trying to dunk it at that point because we're trying to make quota. So it's just, you're coming off of what like 14 is, you know not boring, but it is, again, just right in front of you, what you make of it, to then go right into 15. And again, it's what you make of it. The miss is very clearly to the right. Like, you don't want to miss there. Sorry, where you don't want to miss is to the right, but you can just hit a strong draw left and everything's going to feed right into the green.
Yeah, I wanted to make another mention too. I just think an underrated stretch of the course would be 10 through 14. I loved 10 so much. I think it kind of had this feeling of like almost like, you know, a lot of courses they'll start you off with what they call, gentle handshake for the first hole, and I think that was almost kind of a gentle handshake for the turn for the back nine. Again, very wide fairway, however, tons of land movement, and the the approach shot, no matter where you are in the fairway, I believe is basically completely blind unless you go way way left. And so I hit a shot. So I was in the middle of the fairway, and I could barely see the top of the flag, and I had 100 yards, and it was it gave me all the same feelings and discomfort, I guess you could call it, of saying like, oh, I need to hit the shot over a forced carry or something, because I don't know what the result is going to be. I just need to make a good swing. And but but the blind shot is just something that I definitely don't get to experience nearly enough in golf with the courses that I usually play, or the areas that I play. And that hole really that hole and that approach shot was really a cool little microcosm of that. And I ended up hitting the pin, which is crazy, but
Yeah, yeah. You hit that, and I was like, yeah. That was very. I think it's the flag, and then I was like, it was
yeah,
crazy. It
yeah,
was
yeah.
what one of your best ones of the day. What I mean, it feels like cheating. I mean, but like, we like to do favorite hole. I mean, I don't think it's ridiculous to say 16 might be the best hole on property. So I feel like that's the obligatory, like, when was that y'all's favorite hole? I think that's the one where I got you the first. I played there last time, and this time you get that you're just like, it's probably the most, like, other than maybe even more so than 7 at Old Mac. It's like the place where you're like, holy shit! Like it's like truly a holy shit moment standing on the tee, and also it's one of those moments where I love the fact that it's 16 because we were obviously doing quota, but like, do you really want to be like one down standing on that tee in match play, right? Like, it's like not really. I mean, or maybe you do. I don't know, but like that's just the whole, like, it is provocative. It is a lot going on. And the funny thing is, again, going back to weather, when we played there in the summertime, I hit my 17-degree hybrid over the green onto the next tee box. And this time I absolutely beat the living shit out of my driver and had like 125 yards in. And then had the scariest, legitimately, how this whole plays is like, to the right side of the green is just the ocean. I literally hit my wedge and right off the club screamed, no, 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 because I thought I had hit it too far. But it catches the wind and kind of was in the middle of the green. But I think 16 is the fact that, you know, in the summertime you can drive it over the green at a 17-degree hybrid. But then for us, like, that is quite possibly the most scared I've ever been standing over a wedge. And that's just amazing golf architecture. Like such a amazing golf hole by David McClay Kidd.
That
Yeah,
might be the hardest I've ever swung with the driver too. Was on that tee shot. So I was just like, just
it's
get it
scary.
over. Just do whatever you got to do.
Yeah, it's scary. I think that has to be my favorite hole as well, just because of how you can get. I mean, our group was spread out throughout that entire hole. I mean, I think Dash was in the shits right in the center. I hit a poor shot, but luckily was in the fairway to the right. Which our caddy was like, "Huh, I haven't seen somebody hit there in a long time." And I was like, "Okay, my bad." And then like JD's up left in the fairway, and then Hussey I think was pulled left as well. I can't remember exactly, but there were so many different options and so many different approaches into that as well. And just the fact that it changes that much, like hearing you hit a 17 hybrid into there over it blew my mind. It has just blown my mind because it plays completely different during the summertime, and that's wild.
Yeah. Guys, any other thoughts? Any parting thoughts on Bandon Dunes before we jump over to Trails real quick?
12 was my favorite par three
Yeah.
of the par threes. I think that hole is just so strong. I mean, and it kind of feels like cheating because, like, yes, you have the ocean as a backdrop, so that kind of already gives it a few points. But I think for me personally, like, I think it's a good yardage. I think I hit my
Hmm.
8 iron, which is my favorite club to hit, and I think that's like that mid, like 6, 7, 8 iron distance is such a fun shot to hit into a par three. And we had a crosswind, which I love because like it engaged kind of the artistry in me, or because if it was just straight downwind or straight into the wind, it'd be like, okay, just hit it low or club up. But the fact that it was a crosswind, um, it had been raining, but the sun had just come out, so like the greens were firming up. You're trying to figure out like how should I approach this, and how do I tackle this hole. And out of all the par threes, that one was the most engaging for me personally on that course. That was my favorite.
And when you realize that that's the first hole they built when they put on the postcard, you're like, yeah, that
Yeah,
actually
makes
it's
sense.
almost like they knew what they were doing.
The greeting card hole.
Yeah.
Yeah, greeting card hole. Okay,
So
Bandon
just real
Trails. I
quick,
mean,
I just thought of this.
oh yeah,
Does the
hit me,
greeting
John.
card hole, does that mean that the postage stamp is its sister hole? Because you put a stamp when you send out the card.
Ooh,
Mr. Kaiser, something to think
not
about.
not
Anyways.
bad.
Damn, John's provocative thoughts right there.
Yeah.
Okay, but to jump over to a completely different style, Bandon Trails. Yes, the flag over my head, which might tell you where it stands on my power rankings, or does it? This could all be deceptive. I could have flags from everything around here, so we'll get to that. But yeah, so Bandon Trails, Core Crenshaw design, obviously kind of famously known for not being on the water, being up in the hills, or I guess if to go specifically to what the fried egg said, it starts off 1 and 18 are in the dunes. The middle part kind of is in the meadow. Then it kind of gets up to the forest, and you really kind of hit three different terrains essentially at Bandon Trails. This was I think just to give people context, day one was OG Bandon Old Mac. Day two was Sheep Ranch, which we're not even going to talk about. Sheep Ranch, we played 11 holes. We froze our ass off. We quit. It was awful. It's the worst golf. It was unplayable.
It
Greens were
snowed.
terrible. Yeah, it snowed. So we're not really going to talk about Sheep. Day three was Trails and Pacific Dunes. And then day four was, we were going to do Old Mac in either Pacific Dunes or Trails, but it was 40 degrees and raining constantly. And we just decided to have lunch and not do that. So yeah, so this was our morning round of our third day after vibes were pretty low from our Sheep Ranch rain out. So John, take us to Bandon Trails.
Yeah. So I think just based on all the content I had taken in about the entire property, um, Trails was the course I was looking forward to the most, just because I knew it was going to be unique. I knew it wasn't going to be one of the oceanside courses. I was very intrigued, but also it seemed to me that every ranking quote unquote authority, or everyone who had ever been to Bandon and had been there often enough to give the courses a ranking, seemed to have Trails either near the top or at the very top. And so I was very curious as to, how this could come to be. I had played a few Core Crenshaw courses before, at some, resort style or destination style courses. So I kind of had an understanding of their architecture and kind of the strategy that they put into courses. But I think that the just the property, the landscape, the movement, of land, and with this property, it was more of elevation change, but also with some land movement and rumples thrown in. It was just, I don't, it was just there's just I've never played a course like it. The walks from green to tee, the reveals that you get. Every hole essentially is almost an island unto itself, which I don't think I've ever played many courses like that. The back nine. I mean, I was going through and I found a scorecard, a blank scorecard, and I was trying to circle some of the holes that I liked, and I ended up circling basically every hole in the back nine. So and I've never felt that way about a course besides my favorite course of all time, which is Pasatiempo. I think there's a lot of similarities between those two courses, just with the setting, the intimacy, and also the strategy. But yeah, and then really interesting, I thought, was the start. I think hole one was such a kind of out of left field for me because I, in my head, I was expecting like we're going to be in the forest and in the woods from start to finish, and the fact that you start out with the hole that could live on any other course on the property, it would be very much at home on the front nine at OG Bandon. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah. I felt very similar to that. And I was, we had a really good grouping for the trails. We were continuing our, what was it, the second round of our match play. So, yeah, it was you, me, John. John, it was me, John, Dash, and Hussey all completing our matches. And fun fact, Dash and I both took Chris on as our own caddies, and she double looped for us, double bagged for us for our match together. So that way it was kind of even playing. And to echo your point on one, I stepped up to one and I was like, wait, I thought we were going to be into the woods. And I grew up playing golf in Auburn, California, and it's very wooded up there. So I know how to play mountain golf and golf through the woods, and I played quite a bit up in Tahoe as well. So going into it, I was like, okay, cool. I'll feel comfortable with this. Like, I'm not going to have a problem hitting through trees and kind of navigating this. And I felt that the entire way. I was like, I don't feel like I'm by the ocean, which is kind of weird. And it's so polarizing to all the rest of the courses the entire time. And it was just a ton of fun. I mean, from start to finish, you just get to kind of forget that you're forgetting that you're at Bandon. You're forgetting that you're at this resort course on the ocean because you're on a hike. Like, it truly is just, you're hiking through a mountain and through the trails. And the name trails just is, I kept laughing every single time from the end of a green to the next tee box. You don't see that tee box right after it, compared to what we just talked about with OG Bandon, where you can see that tee box from the green or it's all wide open. You're seeing all these other holes. You don't see anybody else. You don't see anything else. I mean, even the halfway house the turn stand was out in the middle of nowhere. And the fact that you're taking a truck shuttle up all the way up the hill, Heart Attack Hill, as what Chris told me. She said that so many people they had literal heart attacks trying to climb up that mountain to go up to 14. It's just it's so polarizing from what you've been playing or what you're going to play that it stands out. It stood out a lot for me too by just our matches. I mean, the match plays that we were having there was so much fun from start to finish, and there's so many options to get in trouble, from every single second shot that you're going to hit, you can get into trouble real fast. And that's so much fun with match play because I'm thinking, okay, cool, like I've already lost this hole, and then all of a sudden I'm right back into it and about to win the hole, coming into the green. So I loved it. I mean, it was such a fun course for me to play.
Yeah, I echo all of that. And I think for me, John, as you said, I consumed kind of all the content. Um, I was not trying to be a hipster when I said this, but I wanted trails to be my favorite, which kind of felt weird to say. But my thing is like I feel lucky, and you do too, John. Like living where we live. Even though I've only lived in SF and been a golfer really for 3 years, I play coastal golf. Like I've played Sandpiper down by you. You know, maybe not the best golf course, but like holy shit, you want a day in the sun at Sandpiper? Like what 10 at Sandpiper is one of my favorite golf holes in the world. So I'm used to now seeing a lot of coastal golf. So the wow factor of the coast, it was great. But my thing is, I just want to play the best golf course. And a lot of people who I really trusted said Bandon Trails is the best golf course, period. And so that's kind of the perspective I went into. I was a little bit biased. But I realized that for me, part of it was sentimental because as I've shared before, I was lucky enough to not grow up on, but like my dad was a member, or I guess we were members. My dad was paying the bills of a Core Crenshaw at Lake Oconee, which is like an hour and a half outside of Atlanta called Cusquilla. And it all connected for me when I sent a picture to my dad, who it's going to sound ridiculous. I've talked to my dad in the past. He's a two handicap who has a tournament called the Ross, like knows a lot, I think, about old school golf architecture, but like is not a Bandon devotee, doesn't have any interest in going, doesn't know the courses, doesn't know the designers. So he really didn't know, didn't know. And I sent him a picture of I think number 15, which is low key, maybe the best green side I've ever played, period. Um, and he said, I don't know where you are, but all I know is those are Core Crenshaw bunkers. And the light bulb went off where the reason Bandon Trails really resonated so hard with me was so much of that design felt so incredibly familiar to me. Like where I really grew up, like where I have my sharpest memories of golf is getting up to the lake on a Friday at 5 o'clock in July. And my dad and I go into the pro shop and they're like, just take a cart. And we're just flying, playing, me and him in a cart, just flying around, playing as many holes as we can. And those Core Crenshaw bunkers and greens and surrounds. And even though, at the time I'm in Eatonton, Georgia, it's literally where Cusco is, Eatonton, Georgia, fucking redneck middle of nowhere. Sorry to Eatonton, Georgia, but that's what it is. And suddenly at this moment, I'm like, I am with quite literally my best friend in the world, and Nick, my buddies who I love so much, who I'm going to be doing this with. And I think for me, it was number three. It was a par five. And I looked over and the rain had just stopped. And I just remember looking at the moss on the tree, on the tree. And it was this super vibrant green. And that's just not the kind of vegetation that I'm used to. That's a very Pacific Northwest thing. So Bandon Trails felt incredibly familiar to me and like I was on the moon at exactly the same time. And just the full circle of Cusquilla is where I have my favorite memories with my dad. Like I would give anything to go back to being 12 years old, playing golf with him, having that access. But like it makes me sad. I've talked to this in the past. Like I don't play much golf with my dad anymore. We live across the country. I talked to him about it, but like I don't it makes me sad to say this out loud, but I know that I'm not gonna play as much golf with my dad as I would like to. And that's just probably going to be true moving forward. But the fact that it's almost like that was a moment for me where it's like the baton was passed. It's like, well, now I'm at Bandon and I'm with my crew and these are like my boys. And like this, my dad, my whole life, my dad was going on golf trips and telling me about it. And I was like, okay, cool. And now here I am at 30 years old with my group of guys at my Core Crenshaw. And it just really, really hit like in a way that was like I know it's very personal, but also too like with all that sentimental out, by far the best golf holes on property. Like even forget the setting. Like to John's point, it's like you turn the corner, it's like what the fuck? Like are you kidding me? Like look where we are. So I think that combination for me of I really do think it's the best golf holes on property. But I had that holy shit moment at 15 Fairway. I was like, this is the proverbial passing the baton to me of how I grew up, where I am now, and I got really emotional. I mean, honestly, like I had I still have like I have like an emotional connection to Bandon Trails that I've probably never felt at any course ever. Like I'm with you, John. I think like Pasatiempo is the best golf course I've ever played, but like it's just different, right? Like Bandon Trails just hit in a very specific way. So that's kind of my personal story, but I just can't wait to get back there because I mean it felt again for the 15th time extremely familiar and very foreign at the same time, and I think that's really special. And also to get up into the golf holes, the par fours were great, but I think like the par fives at Bandon Trails are probably the best par fives I've ever played. Like number three is like such an amazing par five. Number nine is such an amazing par five. Number 16, I can't tell you many uphill par fives that I think are good. 16 is an awesome hole. The par threes are just like so like one, you're hitting a fucking, even in the cold, we're hitting a fucking sand wedge, you know, really kind of all kinds of shots. So it's like the par fours are all, you know, you have your opinion on 14. The par fours are all very solid. The par fives are some of the best you ever played. The par threes are some of the best you ever played. And yeah, it's not on the water, but part of the beauty of Bandon is like, and I think this is kind of the point, you have to almost think of Bandon holistically, right? Like, okay, like if you just put like, if the golf course is just Bandon Trails, I think it would resonate. But like, you're probably going to have a round after that where we get to OD on the coast. So like, there's no real point to be like, well, I don't get to look at the ocean. But again, I think the caveat of where you live is important because Jake, our buddy from Atlanta, Jake's like, yeah, Bandon Trails was amazing, but it wasn't my favorite because I live in suburban Atlanta. I don't see the ocean, right? So like Jake wants the ocean. I get that. Like John fucking plays coastal golf all the time. Like he likes the ocean, but like he probably wants the best golf hole. So it's all very specific to who you are, where you come from, where you live. But for me, Bandon Trails hit everything. So thank you for letting me opine. But like it's just the more time that's gone by, the more I've fallen more deeply in love with Bandon Trails. I've thought about it, candidly.
Yeah, and kind of going back to one of the things that Pat said that made the trails round so special was obviously we had set up kind of a trip long tournament, so a couple days of quota rounds for those that are familiar with that, and then we got into a match play bracket. And our group, it was myself, Pat, Hussey, and Dash. We were the semifinal matches, and so it added just another layer of excitement. And you still want to you want to see everyone when you're playing in a match. I've always hated playing in a match where the other person's just playing really, really bad, and you don't even have to be playing well. You could be playing bad too, but you're just like, man, I don't feel like it's not going to feel like a win at the end of the day. And Bandon Trails, for whatever it was, like it was just everyone was playing. I felt for where we were in the trip, for considering it was our first time playing a course, I felt like the people in our group came to play and everybody came out swinging. I saw some amazing shots from everybody in the group, recovery shots, approach shots, and match play. Just the beauty of match play just adds so much because you're not worried about it. Just allows you to be so much more present with every hole, and you pay much more attention to the details of each hole because it's going to matter a lot more. And I also think with match play, because you are maybe watching or you're a little bit more cognizant of the other people in your group, because one of those people, or two, if it's a 2v2 you're playing against, so you want to be aware of what they're doing. And I feel like just that added sense of, your eyes are always looking around at where they are. They're like, oh, where are they hitting from? Oh, I wonder what that shot's like. And then you see how their ball reacts when it gets into the green from that angle. And it's just all these things that kind of stack up and they add so much detail to your mental, my memory of the course. And I think that's just another reason why it stood out so much for me personally.
Yeah, just to tack on to that, I mean, the memory of that course was, similar to Ashton, it was very familiar with what I grew up playing. But having those two matches going on, and we were all playing pretty good golf. Poor Dash had, again, shout out to the food, had a stomach bug that he was dealing with. Wasn't feeling his best, but that kind of helped even out our handicaps a little bit as well, because both matches, both matches went to 18, if I'm not mistaken, right, John? Yours went to 18 as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
so both
Yeah.
matches went to 18, and what a fun stretch of holes too to finish on while playing match play. Also, shout out to Chris, our caddy, who Dash and I, we were not playing good caddy golf. We were almost every single tee shot was complete opposite. Either he topped it and I was pushing it over to the right or something, or I was pushing it to the right or hooking it to the left, and he had gone out to the right as well. It was just we were all over the place, and that was a little tough for her. I saw at some points I was carrying a 7-iron down the fairway trying to hike over to my ball, and we caught ourselves kind of falling apart. We fell back a little bit on the pace of play. We got in a little bit of trouble there, and so we pushed it through the middle. But it was so much fun to play 2 matches through that course. I mean, what a fun match play course. Just like I said earlier, you can get in trouble and you're right back into it. Your opponent can get in trouble, and so you got to really experience the whole course the entire time while playing match play. I was super excited to have that there, and I was excited. That was my first caddy experience ever. So to have somebody carry my bag for me, and I was beat up. I mean, the guys who played with me saw I was out of shape, and I needed somebody to carry my bag through that course because I was in rough shape. So it was just
You
a
hit
ton
it
of
well,
fun.
Pat. You hit it very well.
I kept some good shots in there for sure. Thank you. But I mean, from top to bottom, I mean, I have a list here of just like this hole was fun, this was super fun, I enjoyed this was super hard but still manageable. Like we can get into specific holes if you guys want, but I mean every single hole I felt was super engaging start to finish. I mean, just the fact that you're engaged on the walks between holes says a ton about the course.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think, yeah, let's definitely. I mean, again, we'll not talk about every single one, but pick a hole or two that you really want to talk about for sure. I mean, there's so many, but like, I'm definitely curious to hear what ones like really were the cream of the crop for you guys.
um I John, did you want to go ahead? Sorry, you're muted.
Oh, sorry. I just realized I was muted. I was gonna say the one that keeps coming back to me. Um, and again, it's so hard to choose a definitive favorite with this course because it's more like there's just stretches of holes that kind of complement each other so well, and you just get on a run. But for me personally, I think the tee shot on 11 is one of the coolest looking, like funnest tee shots hit. The fairway looks like it's slanting almost like on a 45-degree angle, like to your right. You don't see it land at all. It's a blind tee shot, but you know it's a dogleg right, and you're surrounded in the trees. And again, it's kind of like that Pasatiempo Pinehurst thing where I mean, like you said, Ashton, like I'm a coastal kid. Like I very rarely play in the woods, but just that sound of hitting a good drive and that echo off the woods. And I think that was kind of during the stretch where we had the best weather during the round, so it was just clear and it was quiet and sunny, and you just hear birds chirping, and then whoosh, like the crack of the driver, and then you see it sailing over the hill, and you're like, that felt great. I can't wait to see where it ends up. Like, and then the approach shot was cool. You got a giant mound on the left. The green is almost like a miniature version of the fairway where it's like super high on the left side and comes all the way back to the right. And I tried to hit like a big I tried to hit like a big swooping hybrid to get it to land at the very top of the hill and trickle down to the hole, and it ended up getting caught like halfway through. And then I had like a very interesting chip. And the other match, like everyone was having, I think you guys were having some interesting travels through that hole. I think Pat might have been in the bunker right in the giant fairway bunker on the right, and hit like a pretty good approach from there. And it's just it's just one of those things where tee shot very engaging and also very mysterious. You don't know where it's going. The green, the approach shot, because you're hitting from kind of elevation to like a green that runs away from you. It's just a big mystery until the ball stops rolling. And that again, that's one of those holes that visually stunning, strategically very engaging, and it just checked all the boxes for me.
Yeah. Um, I'm gonna cheat a little bit on this question of a favorite hole because for me, Six's approach shot was my favorite approach. It's the one where you have that speed slot fairway, giant fairway that slopes right to left, so you can get some pretty good breaks there. If you hit it up on that right side. But I just remember standing at that approach shot and turning back. And I love a hole that you can turn back to and just be on an approach shot, and you're just like, huh, this is pretty freaking awesome to just stand here, look at where you came from, and just enjoy it. Enjoy a hole going both ways, looking at it from the approach. And then my second favorite shot was 18's tee box. Since our matches came down to 18's tee, I was one down, and Chris was caddying for us, and I loved this moment of this. This is one of my favorite moments of the trip when she was caddying for both of us. She goes, Pat, why don't you hit driver? I smashed a driver up the fairway, hit a great shot, and then she goes, Dash, take a hybrid, maybe an iron off the tee. And so she's caddying for both of us in the middle of our match, and it was just laughable. We laughed about it for the rest of the trip. But that tee shot on 18, it's you can play aggressive, you can play conservative. It's a really fun tee shot coming into a final hole.
Yeah, God, yeah, six was a cool hole. And that was so funny because JD, there was like, I forgot what it was exactly, but JD had a pretty clear idea in his head of what he wanted to do. And he kept asking Maddie for basic permission to do it. And like 4 or 5 times, Maddie was like, that's like not the right play. JD's like, oh yeah, but I mean, if I hit 3 wood, he's like, nope, that's not right. And like, you could just see JD getting a little fidgety where like, he thought he had a clear idea of what he wanted. Maddie was like, I wouldn't do that. We get up there and we're like, yeah, no, that was for sure not the right play. Like if we had done that. Um, it goes back to kind of the aha moment I mentioned earlier, but I think that 15 was fucking sweet. That's the hole. Basically, it's a par four. There's like a gigantic cross bunker that kind of really dictates what you're trying to do. So
Love
I
that
think,
hole.
I
So
think
good.
of course JD like absolutely fucking destroyed a driver like over the fucking like bunker, like a shot I don't have in the bag. I kind of hit this like hybrid out there. Um, and that's where I was standing in the fairway. I took a picture of my dad, and that's what he said. But that's cool. I think that green site, it's literally built, it's literally built like into the hill, essentially. And Maddie said they've actually softened that green a little bit because it actually used to be even more aggressive than it is. But literally from even just when you're standing in the fairway, you can tell the whole thing is pitched top to bottom, and like where you place that is so key. And I think it was the best. Like it's a hole to me. There's a lot of those out there, but that is one to me. I don't know if this is actually the case, but I looked at it and I was like, this hole was clearly like found, right? Like that green site was, again, I know they softened it a little bit for play, but like that green site existed here well before this was a golf course. And that is just so cool to like from, I was like 155 yards away and I'm like I can see Bill Core and I can see Core Crenshaw walking out there and being like, "Well, that's a green side, isn't it, Ben?" Like you could just see it so clearly, and it was also dope. Mick was in the fairway bunker and like looked like he was absolutely boned. He hit it to like 3 feet, and it was one of those where like it literally looked like he almost like made it. He made birdie there, and that was just really fun to watch him hit a good shot. But I mean, again, I think we can keep playing this game over and over again. But like to your point on the back, John, it's like um, 10, I mean, I made birdie on 10. 10's good, but to your point, like 11, the hole you talked about, I think 12 is great because it's kind of one of these holes where it's like, again, going back to the par threes, I love diversity of par threes where literally like the first par three is legitimately a 56-degree wedge. And on that one, I hit my 240 yard, 17-degree hybrid and hit it to like 15 feet over on the left side. But I love when a par three is actually, you're not just hitting like 8 iron, 8 iron, 8 iron, or something like that. And so to go like that hole, and then I think like 13 is really underrated. It's kind of like a dog leg, but what I love there is the green site where there is quite possibly the most penal bunker I've ever seen in my life on the right side of that green. And it's a very like tortoiseshell style green. And so basically it's like I asked Maddie, I was like, where do they put the pin? He's like, they really don't get too far past the middle because basically anything to the left falls off down to a swale. anything to the right goes in the death bunker. And I just think it's fun. Again, after having a 240-yard par three where the green is like football fields wide and there's sort of Augusta style bunkering. So like there's literally like 100-yard window that you can hit that into the hole before it's just long. And there it's like, okay, can you hit an 8 iron, not into a hula hoop, but like you need to be like really precise there, or else you're going to get fucked because that bunker on the right is you might never come out of it. And also, small thing, but in your head, 14 is next. Like there's literally this like 75-year-old guy with a big old pot belly waiting to fucking drive your ass up the hill. And you know that you got this confident hole coming up next. So it's like, and then you have 14, which is like, I don't think it's a good or bad. I just think it is, but I'm kind of glad it exists. 15 is dope. 16 is amazing up the hill. 17 is a great par three. 18 is great. And you're just like, oh my God, what a cocaine train of holes. Like, I just witnessed like such a banana land segment of holes. And so you walk off the course, and you're like, can we go do that again? It's like, oh my God. But 15 is the one to me where, again, that green site was like, that's been here for 1,000 years. And I'm so glad we get to play on that green because that was meant to be a green. And again, so often we play golf courses that are constructed, not found. And it's probably the best example of, Core Crenshaw design style is to find golf holes, like that naturalist style. And 15 just like screamed, like, we found this. And like nature built this. And we just kind of moved the dirt around, seeded it, and like, here, go play it. That really kind of captivated my imagination.
Yeah. 15, I love how the edges of the green just melt into the bunkers, the green side bunkers. And like, I've always loved that look. 13, I just need to say one of the greatest bunker shots I've ever witnessed was Pat out of that green side bunker. I think he hit it to like a foot. He hit it like super close or something. I want to say you like
was that
getting close to like almost holding. Like I couldn't even see you when you were in the bunker. I was standing on the green.
I think
And you hit like an amazing shot. It was right
yes.
before we got the
right before the
truck.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. 13 was. I had some really fun bunker shots that round. 13 was one of them.
I was paying more attention to your guys' match on that hole because I completely blew it right into the trees, and I was like, okay, Hussey, you got this one. So I was essentially just walking to the green like a death march and watching you guys play. And I remember
that bunker
thinking,
was.
like, oh no, like Pat, like.
Oh, I hit a perfect drive. That's what was so upsetting about that, because I hit a perfect drive. Yeah. Dash was way to the left, and I ended up just, the wind caught it, and it hit just at the very right edge of that green and kicked straight right into the death bunker. And then I hit a really good bunker shot up to a foot, and then another good bunker shot I think was on 15. And Ashton, to your point, that's such a fun green, just green itself, because I ended up chunking my approach shot. I was at the front. It was a back pin that day, I believe, on 15. And so I was up in the front bunker. I think it was like, it's like a 30-yard bunker shot I have at that point. And I hit that one to about 2 feet as well. And I thought our match was almost over at that point, until I hit that. Dash missed his putt, and we got right. I was right back into the match as well. So yeah, the bunkering was a ton of fun there. 15 was great. Curious to hear your guys' thoughts on 4 with the giant sand ridge through the middle of the fairway. I was incredibly confused. I asked Chris like 3 times, where's the pin? Where's the pin? Where's the pin? And for some reason, I was like, okay, it's a dogleg right. I can't see the pin. It's going to the right. So I hit my shot a little bit to the right. I hit it over the right bunker. And I was like, cool, that's a great shot. She's like, yeah, but you'll have a blind shot in. And I said, blind into what? Like, where are we going? So that's one that I can't wait to go play that course again, because I know where I'm going. But once I got to that ridge, I'm like, oh, this makes a lot more sense now.
Yeah,
I
that's
like 4 a
definitely.
lot.
I had a big yank to the right, and like you, I was like, I had no clue. I was guessing on a number at the wrong club. I was like, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, it's Captain Obvious. But I think all these will be so fun to kind of TBD on if we'll take a caddy again. No knock to Chris and Maddie. I just think that like now that we kind of know where we're going, it's going to be pretty helpful. Um, Anything else, guys, on trails? I mean, I feel like we've gushed, but I think the point is like it's worth gushing about.
Just a quick note on 14, because I know that is kind of a controversial hole. When we played it straight into the wind, and like it kind of made it took the controversy out of it, if you will,
Yeah.
because it wasn't so much like, oh, are you going for it? Are you going to get boned? Is every drive going to end up in the same spot? Like it was pretty much like sort of straightforward par four at that point, kind of turned into like a mid-length par four. And the tee shot, I think, became harder because then we were all trying to figure out what we were going to hit. It wasn't just because it was into the wind. It wasn't an automatic driver because we weren't sure how much the wind was going to affect our balls. And then I ended up hitting a drive that at first I thought was pulled, and then I ended up finding like I got far enough up the left that I was still in the fairway, and I had found a flat spot. And then I think Dash and I forget if it was Pat or Hussey, they had hit theirs kind of more towards the right bottom, and yeah, and you had more of a blind elevated shot. And so I think even that even that hole playing a little bit differently than it might have been intended. I think there was so much like strategic integrity and shot value in there that it just made like you had to think about the tee shot because you didn't want to end up at the bottom of the hill, but then the approach shot is you have a wedge into a green that is, you know, it looks like it's no wider right to left than like 10-15 yards. And we had the pin, I believe it was in the back, and there's kind of a ridge that bisects the middle. And it's one of those visually intimidating things. Again, like you hit a good shot and then you see it bounce and you see the ball disappear, and it's just you don't know until you get up there, and it just kind of leaves you. It's that whole uncertainty of the blind shots and the strategic shots. It just adds so much to the experience playing the hole because you're never letting up.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is like I'm very neutral on 14 because I think that, and again, I know this is kind of playing up to the gentle Ben moniker, but a lot of what Core Crenshaw do, like we said, is sort of like they're finding the subtleties, right? That's a lot of what they do. And that's a lot of what Bandon Trails is. But I don't necessarily mind the fact that there's one hole where it's like, hey, you know, we've been very subtle and now we're going to like sucker punch you. But then as soon as we sucker punch you, we're going to kind of like take your body and then kind of push it like back to kind of being pretty subtle, right? It's like it's like an outlier hole. But I don't think that's a net negative. I don't really have an opinion candidly on good or bad. I just think it is. But I do think there is something thrilling that I'm sure is not why they did it. But I do think it's a really interesting thing. It reminds me actually again similar to Pasta Tiempo, where like you like for me when I've played Pasta 3 times now, like I don't know when the next time I'm going to play it is, but I'm already thinking about 11. I'm already thinking about 16. Right? I think there's something to a golf course where it's like you're thinking about 14 as you're putting the peg in the ground on one, right? Like you're already thinking about 14. I think that's again neither good nor bad, but I think that's kind of fun because again, so many golf courses we play are just sort of they are right. They're fine. We're happy to play them, but they're just kind of okay. Like it's a golf course, and like 14 is just something where there are so many good holes, but the fact that there's a little bit of sauce, a little bit of spice, is good. And selfishly, it was thrilling because I blew my drive left, dropped, hit a chip, kind of a stinky chip down to like the catch area, and then I made a putt off the green that Maddie said was like the most ridiculous putt he's ever seen. I think the line he told me I blocked like a foot right of my target, and it somehow went in, and so I made par, and I was like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever seen. But yeah, I don't know. I think there's something to it. Like it's memorable, it's controversial. I do think it's way better. I cannot imagine the bunker being right next to that. Like I think that it's much more fair than how I've heard it was before. But again, neither good nor bad. It's like okay, like, and also I think something too. Like if you're playing good golf, it's like you gotta cut the head off of the you gotta cut the head of the final boss. You gotta figure out the final boss. And okay, like go figure it out, right? It's like the fucking Phil at Shinnecock. It's like fucking I don't know. Yeah, the greens are like fucking rocks. Go find a way to make a score. I don't know what to tell you, you know? Like don't whine, go make a score. And I think that's totally fine. Totally fine.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it plays so differently being into the wind versus downwind. I can, and during the summertime, I feel like that's such a key difference there and how you play it and how you can enjoy it. But Yeah, I personally like the hole. I had a ton of fun on the hole. I enjoyed the tee shot. I enjoyed my approach shot. I mean, I had a decent look at birdie. So I mean, maybe it's just my personal experience with it, but I
Oh
personally had a
yeah.
ton of fun with the hole.
And the other thing too is like we did this, but just to echo this, to everybody, like, just play match play. That hole becomes way less. It becomes way less of a big deal if you're playing match play, right? You're playing for a score, and that hole derails your round. It's a really, 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 really fun match. It's a perfect spot. 14 can help swing a match. Like Jake was kind of coming back in our match. I made that putt for par, and like that ended things. Like his run ended immediately when I made that putt, but that's kind of fun. So play match play, embrace 14 for what it is, and keep on rolling. But guys, this has gone on for way longer than I thought, so we'll get out of here with our rankings. The caveat here is like Pat and John are not going to talk about sheep because again, we played 11 holes, conditions were bad. Excited to do a sheep pod. Maybe what we'll do next time is we'll get the whole band together in a couple of years and do the mega sheep ranch pod. But for the purposes of this, we're just talking about the 4 courses we played, not including preserve. So, John, do you want to lead us off with your ranking and a little explanation as to why?
Yeah, so I'll go, and I'll be honest, my rankings have shifted since we've gotten back, and even these past few days going over and recollecting my time at Bandon Trails and at OG Bandon. But I would have to say, if we're going from worst to first, not necessarily the worst, but I'm gonna have to put Pacific Dunes. I know that's gonna be, some people might be in my DMs, but just some quick reasons for it. I don't think it's a bad course at all. I think it was amazing. It was actually my best round was at Pacific Dunes, but I just think out of all the courses on the property, it was the only course that, in my opinion, had any weak holes. And those, for me personally, those would be 8 and 16. Um, I'm fully open to the fact that those holes could play different in the summer with different winds, and maybe that's what makes them more interesting. But for me, those holes were kind of a bit meh, and I birdied 16, and so I'm not letting my experience playing it kind of cloud it or anything. But I just kind of, it kind of left me wanting a little more compared to all the other courses. And it was the last full round that we played. I mean, in semi decent condition, we played Old Mac again, but that was a death march. So Pack Dunes. Then next, I'm gonna put OG Bandon, but it is very close. I had it last, and like I said, that was just because it was the first course we played. My memory from it was very clouded playing it, and it wasn't until going back and going through the holes and going through the yardage book and my scorecard and remembering certain shots and realizing like how impactful that course really was. So it's number 3 for me. Again, not a weak hole in the course. And if I had to pick a course to play every single day of my life, I would pick OG Bandon hands down, because I think it has a little bit of everything. Number 2, and really, it might be a 1A and 1B for me. So 1B is going to be Old Mac. Um, it's just, it's everything about links golf. I mean, I've never played proper links golf. I've never gone to the UK and played there yet, hopefully. But from everything I've heard, from everything I've read, Old Mac just epitomized everything about links golf. The borderline unfairness, the risk reward aspect, the quirkiness, the slopes, the use of the land, the use of the wind and the elements to use them to your favor if you want to try and fight against them. Old Mac just had everything. It was, and we weren't even playing it match play. It was one of our quota rounds, which that might be one of my only regrets of the trip, was that it wasn't a match play round. That I didn't play a match against someone, because that course was just, I almost got to the point where on the back nine, I was kind of trying to play a match against myself, and I was kind of picking shots based on like, okay, well, what if I'm one down, or what if I'm one up? Like, oh, this slope looks really interesting to take. Like, and again, it's engaging is the word that keeps coming to mind, and Old Mac just has that. And visually, it's like, it feels like the biggest ballpark out of all of them. Like the holes just feel massive. I feel like I've been shrunk down, and I'm playing like a full size normal course, which I just think was really, really cool. And then 1A. I mean, we've spent most of the pod, spieling about it, but Bandon Trails is just unreal. My favorite course of all time that I played is Pasatiempo. But Bandon Trails is very, very, very close second as far as overall, and it was pretty clear. I mean, close with Old Mac, but from the other courses, it separated itself as the clear number one in my book.
And John, I think the other thing too, and I know you'd probably agree with this, but I think it's funny because I think like you can literally put pasta and trails in the same because it's like being like, hey, we have two options tonight. We can have a like wagyu ribeye, or we can have like omakase sushi. It's like, okay, like both are amazing. It's kind of like what mood are you in, right? Because those courses are asking very different questions or different conditions, different grass, different bunker styles, different sand. Like it's truly like, do you want red meat or do you want fish? And that's kind of the funny thing is it's funny you say that because when I was walking up 16, I looked at Nick and I was like, how are you supposed to compare a 1929 Alistair McKenzie design to a 2005 Core Crenshaw design, different climates, different sand. So I very much feel you. I mean, I'm probably tipping my hand too, but literally I feel the same way. It's like Pasta Tiempo is one and Trails is 1B, but like some days I want fish and some days I want steak. And I think that's kind of the way, because you can't really compare. They're just incredibly different. Sort of like the old course versus Augusta. It's like it's stupid to compare those two because they're just incredibly different. So just wanted to add that in. But Pat, give us your list, my man.
Yeah, I went back and forth on this one a lot. I have to say, for me, number 4 is Pack Dunes. Again, I'll echo John's comments where it just left me with, wanting more. I was like, and it also could have been because that was our second day of 36. I was physically exhausted. I was just lagging behind everybody on my walk, but there were some holes there where I was just like, man, whatever. But I still had a ton of fun. Like that, it goes to show how fun these courses are. Is that it's last on my list, but I still had a ton of fun. I mean, John and I had a match going that he took me down on 16, and I think the back-to-back par 3s was a ton of fun. I really enjoyed coming into that par 5 where John, you birdied. I can't remember the whole number, unfortunately, but that giant gorse mound on the backside, just still a ton of fun. Number 3, I'm going to have to say Bandon, OG Bandon. I originally had that at number 4, but that when I got to go back and look at all the holes and kind of remember them more in depth, I fucking loved that course. I really do think I could play that all the time, and there's just so many fun different shots you can take. And number 2 for me is going to be Old Mac. I shout out the Ghost Tree. I felt special to play there. I really enjoyed playing more of a proper links course. The only other links experience that I've had is playing the ocean course at Half Moon Bay, and that's just a resort course that's kind of just wide open and some rolling hills. It's it's fun, it's cool, but that was just a ton of fun playing Old Mac. And I mean, coming around that Ghost Tree and seeing it, that's something pretty special. And then 7 was a ton of fun for me. Was just kind of coming up that hill on that approach shot. And then I wore the wrong shoes that day. They destroyed my feet. I lost a toenail because of that round and the shoes that I wore that day. So hiking up that hill on 7 was miserable, but you are fully rewarded once you get to the top of that hill. And even coming into 16 on that course was just, I was like, what the hell is going on? You're hitting over this giant hill in the middle of the fairway with a blind shot. Watching JD hit his shot there, I'll let you guys talk about it on the pod, but that was something special to witness on there. And then number 1 is just Trails. I mean, sorry to have the same list as you, John, but Trails was super, super fun. I felt at home playing a course through the trees, but at the same time, every single shot was just so inviting to take a risk. You know, you can get as aggressive as you want on some of those shots, tee shots, approach shots, even chip shots. You know, you could take a safe route and bail out into the middle of the green, or you could do what I did and just maybe it was because we were playing a match there, but I was like, screw it, let's just launch a pitching wedge 35 yards out of the bunker and try to go for the pin. You know, we're not going to play safe here for strokes. We got to win. So yeah, it goes Trails, Old Mac, OG Bandon pack for me.
Oh, goddamn. This is not what I expected. Because I think I'm similar as y'all. It's just I kind of flip Old Mac and OG Bandon for me. And I'll be pretty succinct because I'm just copying what you guys said. Yeah, I think the way I'd put Pacific Dunes, which is my fourth, is I'd call it a sugar high and a sugar crash. I think that you could easily make the case that it has the best golf holes on property. Really standing out, like four was a holy shit moment. 13 is like maybe the best, like it's close to 16, but it's like maybe one of the best holes on property. Just like the way to describe it's just like again another hole that feels found. Like it feels like that green side is gonna like fall into the cliff and like low key it, like might one day. But it feels that way. But then again, I know I've only played it once, but there's just the stretch of holes that, like it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Like seven, I think seven, eight, nine, and 10. Seven, eight, yeah, seven, eight, nine, 10. It's like, okay, it's like seven is just like really long and straight. Okay. Eight is like a hole I have seen anywhere else. Nine, I didn't really understand the two greens thing. And like, I mean, we only played it one way, but it just didn't really resonate with me. And then 10 is just like, okay, like it's cool. It's in between two, two mounds, but like, or two dunes, but that's it. I mean, granted, don't get me wrong. 12 also might be that, like 12 and 13 is like maybe the two best two holes on property. But to me, when you're playing so many other courses where the floor is so high, I'd rather have a super high floor than just optimize for the highest ceiling, right? That's the way I'd put Pacific Dunes. Old Mac, I'm with you guys. I loved it. I mean, the thing that really said to me was the ghost tree was like 50 times taller than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was like going to be this like cool like little logo, okay, you get there and it's like, oh my God, like it really like has your eyes the whole time. I'm so happy that we got to go and we did because honestly, by 2025, that thing is not going to be up anymore. Like we got to see it and it's not going to be there by the time we go there next time. Really just a majestic, just a really majestic. That's the way I'd probably describe the golf course. It's a little bit silly. The Alps hole was like stupid, but like really fun. But like it's a really majestic golf course. That I just thought was, to your point, John, like really fired my imagination. Uh, OG Bandon, the more I've thought about it, I think the fact that we said is it's a course that like I won't re-summarize, but basically like it's a course that if they had built as the capstone to say, hey, we're going to encapsulate everything on property in one course, and the fact that it was built first before the vision, I think that can't go. I think that should really, it gets bonus points for that. It really, really does. And the fact that 16 is probably the best hole on property is a big deal. And then everything about, yeah, I mean, you heard my 10-minute diatribe about trails earlier. It's all that stuff. Um, so yeah, and for what it's worth, I can say this because I've played it. Again, this might change over time. I would put Sheep Ranch 4 and move Pack Dunes to 5 because the condition wasn't perfect. By the end, I was really cold. We played in the summertime. I just think that the accessibility of Sheep is really great. But the one thing to make mention that I was talking to one of my new buddies, Aaron, about that I think is important about these lists is the magic of Bandon. And I don't know if they did this on purpose, but all these courses have their own place, right? If you want, like, I want to get tested, okay, go play Pack Dunes, right? Like that's as Neil on No Laying Up says, that's sport, right? If you want to go for a walk with your buddies and like feel like going on a hike, go play Trails, right? If you want to kind of see everything all in one place, go play OG Bandon, right? If you want to go experience like links golf, like go play Old Mac, right? And if you just kind of want to go for a walk and be able to hit your drive 150 yards offline and still shoot 75, go play sheep, right? But like that's incredible. Like I think that's the way we all felt it is like they all have it goes back to the same thing where it's like to be clear, we know this. Pacific Dunes is what the number three course, public course in the country. Like we're putting this five on our list, but it's like the way I think about it is like, you know, our buddy Zach Welch from NorCal Golf Guys, he was like, he DM'd me and he was like, yo, like people who've played trails like five, six times, it's not their first anymore. But it's like the way I view it is like, you know, I used to like chocolate ice cream and now I don't as much anymore, right? They're all amazing. But I think when you think about it from my least favorite word, but it's fitting here, the whatever vibe you're optimizing for, they actually have a course that fits that, right? And so different things resonate for people differently, but I think the magic of the place is, Pat, to your point, if our last round we got good weather and how your body was feeling, and you just get to like bring six clubs and go walk around Sheep Ranch, you might have put that like if it was a sunny day, you might be like, oh, Sheep Ranch number one. It's what I needed. It was sunny. I got to look at the ocean, but like it's all kind of where you are in the trip and kind of what's resonating. But one more time, I think the reason Trails is the best, it's got the most, it's got the best golf holes. So that to me, it should always be number one. And then the rest is more of kind of like what vibe are you, where are you in your trip? That's kind of how I think about the ratings. So
It has the best golf holes and has the most. I think it has the highest amount of great golf holes all in one.
yes. And we should also mention you don't see the ocean much, but like when you get to 14, and that's the famous like this is where Kaiser knew was the place. The view you do get is we took a picture up there. It's pretty unbelievable. So you're getting your flavor for sure.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, you
well,
get a lot
boys, I
there.
didn't anticipate this being literally 2 hours. But any final thoughts here?
If you're thinking about going to Bandon, just do it. I mean, we did it the cheapest way possible, and there's a bunch of different ways to do it. I mean, it was. I can easily say this is the most fun golf trip I've ever had. I can't remember the last time I've laughed that hard and had such an enjoyable experience. Truly.
Yeah, I gotta echo that. I've been on a couple golf trips over the last few years with some different groups of people, but Bandon obviously has its special place, just the setting you're in, but and then the combination of the people. Like I just full disclosure here, like I had only met the only person I really knew on this trip was Ashton. I think I'd met JD very very briefly at the last year's cookout, and I knew Hussey, but besides that, like I really had never met anybody on this trip, and the fact that I felt instantly just super comfortable, felt like a group of guys that I'd known for years. The laughs that we had, like, it's just something I'll never forget. And it holds a special place in my heart, and it's about more than the golf at that point. But I think
Yeah.
Bandon Dunes is such a special setting that it caters to that, and it allows for those types of moments to happen so easily.
Yeah,
Well said.
it's a
Yeah.
great way to put it. I mean, and you nailed the. You know, I feel like I feel like the tagline of the podcast has become it's about the golf, but not about the golf. And to your point, Bandon Dunes is just a canvas for. I mean, to your point, I mean, some of those dinners were like we were like laughing like that. That's the hardest I can remember laughing in a really long time. And again, even people I consider Pat to be a buddy. We've played golf together 4 or 5 times, but like, did I know Pat like well before this trip? No. But I feel like Pat's like a good friend now, and I think that the Bandon is the canvas for that.
Yeah.
And it's just, yeah, like it's just, and again, we should also mention, I know we're 2 hours in and people have fallen off, but like our weather sucked.
It was
Like, we
garbage.
need to
I
really
don't think.
emphasize, we got screwed. Our weather
Yeah.
was awful.
Yeah, we didn't talk enough about that. It was horrendous. We literally could not play Sheep Ranch because it was snowing on us, and snow was sticking to the ground. And our Chris and Matt hated us for playing that round too. I have to. That was awful.
Yeah,
That we did
hated
that to
us.
them. We did that to them, so that's our fault.
Yeah, so our buddy JD, he played in my group when we were cheap, and he carried his clubs, and he brought an umbrella. He plays without a glove, just full disclosure. So
Psycho.
he had many towels hanging from his umbrella, and it was so funny because it started out raining while we were waiting to tee off. It started snowing, then it started raining again. At one point, it started sleeting, and I just remember, I want to say it was we had like 2 holes of sunlight, 6 and 7, and then it went right back to sleeting and snowing. And I want to say on 9, I look over at JD and he's carrying his bag, walking under the umbrella, and there's quite literally icicles starting to form on his towels. That was kind of the first sign that maybe we should call it. It was real. It was definitely a test of just how big of a golf psycho are you. I'm not psycho enough yet at that point to play when I can't feel my hands, but I'm definitely glad we went through the experience.
Yeah. And again, can't wait to go. We've heard a lot. This is like a once in a 50-year winter. So let's test out. If we're circling March of 2025, we will report back on the weather. But gentlemen, thank you for coming on. It was, it's fun to memorialize this, but I think, like you said, the biggest thing, the whole reason we started the pod is to be able to, these are the conversations we should have anyway, but it sort of takes recording them to make it happen. So
Yeah.
I love you both. I've missed you. Honestly, our jokes, it's been fun to obviously keep our text thread going, and we'll be back soon, but it's really fun to spend 2 hours with you guys and kind of relive it. And also just selfishly, like, it's cool that you guys also felt like you vibed your face off the trails. Cause like, that's when
Yeah.
I'm like, are we like, you're getting it, right? Like,
Yeah.
come on.
Yeah, no, I mean, thanks for having us on. I had a blast on the trip, and I mean, can't thank you guys enough. And super excited about the memories that we have now, just to continue to share them. And hey Ashton, it was a good trip.
That's funny. I don't care who you are.
That's the most appropriate thing our driver said. But
Yeah.
yeah, I will see you both at the cookout. We got some match play and hopefully some warm weather. If it's fucking raining in May, I'm gonna jump off the bridge at Soul Park. But gentlemen, again, thanks for coming on, and we'll do it again soon. Okay.
Thanks, buddy.
Thanks, man.